Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Kat. In this video, I want to talk about two jobs or positions that kind of share similar traits, and people always debate if they should pursue one or the other, and that is a scientist in a pharma company or a PI position in academia. If you are new to my channel, I'm Kat. I have a PhD in biomedical science, and I left academia and joined consulting afterwards. On my channel, I share knowledge about different type of careers so you can make an easy decision for your future. If you like such content, please don't forget to subscribe. Without further ado, let's get started. If you've done science for quite a long time, you know that typically the goal would either to be a principal investigator in academic institution or, leave academia and join a pharmaceutical company and to be a scientist or lead scientist. If you're a graduate student or a postdoc in academic lab, you would typically think about your future in two different ways. One is stay in academia and, after your postdoc, apply for grants and become a principal investigator, have your own lab in an academic setting. So that could be university or institution. On the other hand, you might think about applying for scientist position in biotech or pharma companies. In that case, you will still be doing science, and down the road, you will also become like a lead scientist or similar concept of a principal investigator in academia, but in industry. So what are the differences? And what are the pros and cons in choosing either of them? So first of all, I think the biggest difference is the flexibility. In academia, you apply your own grant because that's your own lab, and you would choose a topic or a direction that of your own personal interest, right? You can do very basic science, you can do translational science, you can do clinical science. Really depends on your background and your achievements in the past. Meaning, your papers, your publications, your recognition in the field to see what you're good at, and then you apply to those kind of grants specifically. And that's how you're able to fund your own lab, hire postdocs, students, technicians, staffs, etc. In that sense, you are your own boss, right? So you have your own lab. You can decide how many people you want to hire. Obviously, that is determined also by the grants you have. More funding you have, the bigger the lab you can have. So it's correlated. But to a degree that you can choose, who you want to hire. You can choose what direction the lab want to go after. Maybe, it can incorporate some advanced technology such as AI. Then you can incorporate into your data analysis or lab procedures. In that case, you're really the captain of that ship. You can steer this ship to whatever direction you want to do. You can apply to this grant, you don't have to. You can go 100% on NIH fundings, or you can do 100% private fundings, or you can do mix and match. So from the staff to finance to scientific topics, everything is determined by you and you only. On the other hand, if you became like a lead scientist or PI similar position in industry, then you still have certain flexibility on who you would like to hire, because let's say you're a lead scientist, so the junior scientist, you would interview him or her, right? And you have, to a degree, say yes or no to this candidate. Or, if you want to design certain experiments, you could, based on, the papers you read, the conference you attend, you realize there's a new technology you would like to introduce to your group, you can. But the biggest difference is, first of all, the funding is not something that you acquire yourself, right? So you don't write grants to try to get those NIH funding or private fundings. You can, and some of the PIs do in the industry, but most likely you don't have to, because the company is the one that funds your projects. And that leads to the second difference is the freedom of science. You cannot say, oh, my group, I don't want to do, let's say, for example, if your company is really focused on inflammatory disease, and you cannot say, oh, tomorrow I want to do neuroscience. Oh, tomorrow I want to do cancer research. Maybe you have some leeway if, the research you want to go after have some overlap with your current focus, let's say inflammatory diseases. You cannot just say, today you're doing this, tomorrow you want to switch gear 180 degree. You cannot do that because the funding is from the company, right? So your focus or your priority is always company oriented. You have to think about company and company's future and company's profit and shareholders value and etc. and etc. and etc. It's a lot of other things involved other than the pure science itself. And lastly, when talk about recruiting, you do have certain degree to say yes or no to the candidate, but in the end you are one of the decision makers, right? They're also HR from the company, and if the company are willing to hire, let's say, international candidates because they have to sponsor for visas, that's company-wide decision or policy. There's just a lot of things involved when you work for a company. So the biggest difference, as you can tell, is the flexibility itself, right? The flexibility in the science, the flexibility on the staff, and the funding. The next difference is more like the career trajectory, okay? So as a PI in academia or your independent lab in academic institution, it's a tenure track, right? So let's say you become an assistant professor first after your postdoc, then after a few years, you publish good papers, after review on the board from the school, they agree that you can be promoted to associate professor, which is already tenure, okay? And then, of course, you're better, you become a full professor, and your salary increase, your funding hopefully can increase. A lot of, different package will change. But overall, as long as after your associate professor, you are a tenure, right? So the school cannot fire you. That's, what the tenure means. So it's a more safe and secure pathway. And if you were working for a public university, then the salary might be a set amount, right? And additional salary can come from your funding, but your salary are kind of capped in the way if you don't move to, let's say, administrative roles. But in a company, you are, let's say, a PI of a group. You can stay as the PI of that company, or you can, of course, move to another company and become more of a head of R&D, let's say. And then if you are really ambitious and really good at your job and good at people connection, communication, and enjoying more administrative roles, you can start your own company with your research. You can become the chief scientific officer, CSO of a company. There are different ways versus in academia. Other than, being a full professor, you move to the administrative roles. So it will be more like on the school side. Let's say you can become, the school principal or other like roles such as the dean of a program, the dean of a department, things like this. And the next, of course, as you can imagine, with different roles in academia or different roles in industry, your salary and compensation package would be very different. I'm not gonna, elaborate everything on each role, but you can imagine, basically, the sky is the limit for each direction if you are really good at it, right? But of course, with the flexibility in academia comes certain restraints. For example, if you discover something in your lab and you want to maybe put a patent on it or have a company spin off from your company with whatever you discovered in the lab, then the school or that institution does take certain percentage of that profit after this discovery. For example, if you established or discovered a platform tool to, let's say, screen drugs, I'm just saying a very, very broad technique. You want to first patent this and then form a company after this, right? So you want to have your own side company. But when you discover this tool, it was in the lab, and the lab, affiliated with the school or the institution. So that school is also kind of the co-applicant of that patent. So if your company down the road make profit off this tool, which is the foundation of your company, so basically all the revenue and profit associated with this company, the school will take certain percentage of it unless, you have some other negotiation with it. So it's a little bit hard for professors to say, I will just leave my secure, safe, very stable job and, just start a company, because in the end, first of all, that might not be their passion. Second of all, the school can take a good chunk of it. On the other hand, if you are a scientist, principal investigator, or any scientific role in a pharmaceutical company, then, maybe your interests change. Maybe, you don't want to do this area anymore. It's quite easy to switch from one job to the other. It's not as difficult to switch jobs. So for example, if you're more interested in the regulatory segment of the drug discovery, you want to deal with FDA more, then you can kind of, transition from basic R&D or preclinical work to more clinical side of the company, because you're already in that company. Or if you want to, go to a startup or join a bigger company, it's more flexible in that way, because there's just no string attached. You are really, at the moment, at your current job, you work for that company. When you leave, right? It's more flexible in that sense, so there's no constraints. Lastly, I want to say that most likely it is a one-way road, at least from what I've seen. Most likely it's a postdoc in academia lab, they want to leave and they join industry, right? And they don't really go back, okay? It's more likely that you leave academia and join industry and stay in the industry, and then you were in industry and then left industry and become a PI in academia. It happens. Like, I know a few examples. They even left consulting, which is a little bit far from science, and then went back to university to become a PI. It's just a bit rare. And that was a quick rundown and comparison between the two jobs. If you're considering either staying in academia to become a PI or join a biotech or pharma to be a scientist, let me know in the comments and let me know your thinking process behind it. I welcome any comments. If you like this video, please thumb up and subscribe to my channel so I can provide more of such content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.